So can you see my PowerPoint presentation screen?
Yes, sir.
Can you see my cursor? The moving cursor I am moving. Can you find it? Let me change it. Pointer options, laser pointer. Can you find the laser pointer?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir,
sir.
much better.
Okay, yeah. So this is the PPT presentation. And after today's class, today afternoon, TAs will upload this presentation in MS Teams, where from you can download it and keep it for your study. So everything is written in the presentation, whatever we have covered so far. Just let me show you the slides that initially there is a set of atoms. When you give a stretch, when you apply a force, the atom gets stretched. Here it is written bonds are stretched. And if you release the load, they will go back to the initial position. If it is elastic behavior, if it is perfectly elastic behavior. Elasticity can be linear elasticity and non-linear elasticity, we have told. Elasticity can also be independent. Time independent. That you apply a stress, you immediately get an elastic strain. It can also be time dependent. That you apply a stress, gradually you get elastic strain with time. So that is called viscoelastic or anelastic behavior. We will come in detail of those things. Why two atoms separated by a lattice spacing A0? Because between the two atoms, there is a repulsion, there is an attraction.
Sir,
Yes.
so can you hide that that is
Yeah,
sharing your
yes,
screen?
yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Thank you. There is an attraction. We have covered this thing. And attraction and repulsion force, how this varies with distance, you can see by these functions. That basically both are inversely proportional to the distance. Here r is the distance of separation. R is the distance of separation. So they are following this kind of behavior. So finally, this U-shaped curve show the resultant. That resultant potential energy. And when they are at a distance of R0 or A0, whatever you say, lattice parameter, then the potential energy is minimum. And that's why two atoms lie at that particular distance. Here we are showing the same thing. There is a repulsion, there is an attraction, there is a potential energy curve. When the atoms are situated at a distance A0, lattice parameter, energy is phi naught. You give a very little bit of
So we are not able
displacement.
to see your screen. The PPT has gone, sir.
Here's what I held. Oh, can you see it now?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Yes, sir. Now we are able to see.
Yes, yes. So minimum energy phi naught. If you give a small displacement u, then the new energy position along the hill is phi u. So if you release, the energy would reduce and again come back to phi naught. And in that process, the atoms will get stretched and again come back to their lattice spacing. So that is the funda of elastic deformation, as we have already discussed in our previous lecture. So how phi u, the new energy, the increased energy, can be related to the displacement that you give u is this Taylor series expansion. Phi naught is the energy at u equal to 0. So the first slope of this curve is the slope of this curve is 0 at equilibrium spacing point, u equal to 0. So this term goes out. So if you take phi naught that side, so phi u minus phi naught equals to this entire series. If you do differentiation, if you now do differentiation, this term becomes d2 phi by du2 at u equal to 0 into u. And higher order terms are not coming into picture if the elastic deformation is very small. So that is the actually answer. Say elastic deformation amount is 0.0005. So still that value 0.5% is still shows in the curve. But if you take the square, then it will become 0.000005. So that term naturally doesn't have that much of effect. So if elastic displacement is small, then higher order terms do not show that role. And in metal and ceramic, that thing happens. So as a result, you come down to force equals to a constant into displacement, and that constant is the curvature. It is basically the curvature of bond energy distance curve at the equilibrium position, at u equal to 0 position. So that sets your definition of elastic modulus. It's the curvature of the point where they situate. Curvature of the potential energy versus distance plot at that particular point. So it's a constant. Anyway, let me shift it. Western curve, we have shown, we have defined that the points are different. Limit of proportionality, that is proportionality limit B, then comes elastic limit, then come yield stress. And we have defined what are the difference between them.
13 మేడం 13 మేడం ఈ ఎల్సిఎస్ మేడం 3 ఉన్నాయి
Up to proportional limit,
అవి ఎలాగ
directly proportionality is maintained, Hooke's law is maintained. After that, higher order terms come into play. So there is a little bit of nonlinear elasticity. You may see that, you may not see that. In metal, we do not see that. Therefore, in a lot of books, you will find that it is written that proportional limit and elastic limit is the same point, which is also valid because elastic displacement is very small. That's why there is no scope of nonlinear elasticity. And from the elastic limit, we have said that as the elastic limit is crossed, first dislocation movement occurs. But that amount is so small the permanent strain that is generated is so small in the order of lattice parameter, you cannot detect it. But for engineering application, you need something to be detectable, small but detectable. So at yield stress, small but detectable amount of plastic deformation occurs. Sometimes we see the yield point by a typical nature of the curve, which occurs in mild steel, which is known as yield point phenomena. From that, we know what is the yield point.
Sir, your
Voice is breaking.
yes,
Hello.
sir.
So it's fine for us.
Fine for us, sir. I think.
Sir, it is
So,
fine.
okay. So at the yield stress, 10 to the power 6 number of dislocation movement takes place, and then it is come to a detectable value. 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Hold on. What happened? And then the curve goes on, and you see a ultimate tensile strength, maximum value, and then breaking stress. Curve drops. If it is engineering stress strain curve, if it is true stress strain curve, it will continue moving up. Here we are trying to show some kind of nonlinear elasticity, time dependent elasticity, and these things in the curved plot. Definition of dislocation. What is dislocation? If you type in Google, first answer you will get is the above one. A dislocation is a separation of two bones where they meet at a joint. Joints are the areas where two bones come together. A dislocated joint is a joint where the bones are no longer in their normal positions. So joint got dislocated. So dislocation means something that is continuous inside a structure that got moved away, dislocated. So this term we all know that we use the word dislocated bone, dislocated shoulder. So first you will find this definition, and then you will find in material science a dislocation or Taylor dislocation is a crystallographic defect or irregularity within a crystal structure. So fundamentally they are same kind of definition, that something that is shifted from its position. The presence of dislocation strongly influences many of the properties of material. So this plane had to be continuous, it got discontinued. Or a crystal that had to look like this, there is some twist happened due to which there is a screw dislocation. And we have shown that dislocations look like these hairline defects in transmission electron microscopy because the lattice plane shifts near to the dislocation, and from that location the electrons get diffracted, whereas other locations electron get transmitted. So you see that part as a dark line, but sometime if you tilt the specimen, you will find that this line you may not be able to see. Some other line will appear, dislocation line. Because how your specimen is oriented with respect to your electron beam, that is also important. Plastic deformation by slip, 2 atom layers. It not just these 2 atom layer shift, but the entire portion below the bottom layer and entire portion above the top layer. With respect to these planes, the entire portion shifts. So we already have shown many schematic diagram. So there is a shifting going on. Initially it was like this. The top layer was sitting at the groove of the bottom layer. Then there is a shift happened. Then there is another shift happened. So now you find at u equal to b, when there is a 1 Burgers vector shift, then most of the atoms are in their equilibrium position. They are sitting comfortably at the grooves again. And as a result, you see there is a net shape change. This here, top one was the initial, and after a complete shift, this. So there is a permanent shape change, and now atoms are sitting comfortably in the groove. They will not go back again. So this is a more realistic picture of slip. And we have shown that now if we consider that all the layers of atoms, between them, that same potential distance curve is working, and these red lines show the activation barrier, those need to be crossed. So if one atom has to slide to the next position, it has to cross an activation barrier. And considering that activation barrier, we have drawn the activation barrier in energy displacement plot. We are showing a saddle point that need to be crossed. For that, what is the maximum amount of stress that to be applied? That is tau m. So force or stress is the slope of energy displacement curve. So you have to do d phi by d delta. You get stress versus displacement plot, and the maximum stress you need to apply is tau m. And the curve follows an expression that can be represented by sine wave function or approximated by sine wave function. Tau equal to tau m sine 2 pi x by b, where x is the displacement, b is the interatomic distance. And as x is smaller than b, you can remove that sine part, and tau m equal to 2 pi x by b you can take. On the other hand, at the juncture when the elastic condition transform into plastic, the elasticity theory also holds at that critical point where tau equal to g into gamma, where gamma equal to x by a. So you have two expressions. Just remove the put the tau here in place of tau, and you get tau m equal to g by 2 pi b by a, which is a very important expression. And what is this tau m called? This is my question today. What is the tau m called?
Maximum stress required to produce a dislocation.
Yes. You are very right. To create a dislocation, what is the exact term? Anyone, do you know?
Theoretical shear strength.
Theoretical shear strength. Very nice. Theoretical shear strength to cause slip by creating a dislocation. Very good. Theoretical. So now you understand the importance of the word theoretical. So if it is a perfect crystal, ideal crystal, single crystal, defect free, you supposed to get this much of stress need to be applied to create a dislocation and to cause a permanent deformation. That's why theoretical. But actual value is much less than the theoretical. As we said, it comes down to G by say you said that 13 GPa would be the value, but in steel, structural steel, 300 400 MPa strength, yield strength. So that means something must be causing this difference, and the answer is already there were a large number of defects present. Already there were dislocations present inside the body. When you applied load at a certain load value, the dislocations moved. Inside a single crystal, there is a dislocation. How much stress you need to apply to move that dislocation? This is my question. Inside a single crystal, there is a dislocation. How much stress you need to apply to move that dislocation?
Sir, it is essentially pure stress.
Pulse stress.
Pulse stress G by 2 pi.
Okay, so pulse stress that defines slip plane. Pulse stress defines slip plane and slip direction, and it tells that which plane is the slip plane and which direction is the slip direction. Pulse stress defines that. Okay, pulse stress.
CRSS.
Pulse stress defines inside a body there are many planes: 100, 111, 123, 225, 789. You can write many planes inside a body. Now pulse stress defines along them, along all those combinations, which will be the preferred slip plane and slip direction. Isn't it? Is it not? That pulse stress tells that most closed pack plane will be your slip plane and most closed pack direction will be your slip direction. Is it not?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. So it tells that for slip to occur, B has to be minimum and A has to be maximum. Interplanar spacing A has to be maximum and B has to be minimum. Interatomic distance has to be minimum. So that defines very clearly that which combination will be your slip system. What critical resolved shear stress tells us whether slip will actually happen on that slip system or not. You have a slip plane. You know which plane is the slip plane. 111 plane in FCC is the slip plane. 110 direction is the slip direction. But actually a crystal, if you apply load in certain way, whether actually slip it may happen that a dislocation is present on the slip plane, but it may not be able to move. If critical resolved shear stress is not there. If resolved shear stress not exceeds the critical resolved shear stress. So have this thing understanding very clear. Paul stress defines your favorable road. So from here to Kolkata, which road you take, the national highway NH6, that Paul stress decides. But road is there, that doesn't mean that the car will move. To move your car on that road, you need fuel. So that fuel is basically the resolved shear stress, which is pushing the car through that road. Because if petrol pumps are closed, your fuel tank is empty, even if a beautiful road is waiting for you, you cannot go there. So that is critical resolved shear stress concept. It tells, yes, there is sufficient force along that direction so that you can move. These things, whatever I have told now, is written here. What value supposed to be the G and how much should be the theoretical shear strength. Actually, we get much less. And why? Because there is already defect. When a single crystal deforms, as I said, it looks like this. If you apply a tension, generally steps form in one way. If you apply torsion, steps form in a different way. So depending on how you are loading, the structure will change. If you apply bending, it will be some other way. So accordingly, you see a shape change. And we see a step because of slip, which is called slip step. And when we see them on the surface, it is called slip band. Together, they are called slip band. So this is a single crystal deformation. This is showing the slip bands. Concept of dislocation. We have talked about dislocation width. To accommodate a dislocation, nearest neighboring planes have to move away, have to give it space. For that, a stress is created around the dislocation. There is a stress or strain. Whenever there is a stress and strain, there is an energy. So that makes the energy of a dislocation. We have talked about the energy of a dislocation. We have talked about dislocation width. When the width is large, dislocation movement is easy. When the width is narrow, dislocation movement is difficult. We have talked about Pearl's-Navarro stress. What is the effect of B and what is the effect of A? And it decides the lattice friction stress. It's basically lattice friction stress against dislocation motion. We have told that closed pack planes are widely spaced planes. Paul stress is showing slip will occur on widely spaced plane. Now we have to prove that, okay, widely spaced plane are closed pack plane. So that for that, I have told you, you see the XRD planes, which gives you diffraction. Actually, those planes are actually present depending on your crystal structure. So if it is FCC, there is no 100 plane. There is 111, 200, 220, like that. If you actually look into the plane spacing. Similarly, in BCC, there is no 100 plane. 110, 200, 211, like that. So you will find The spacing is largest in case of 111 in FCC and 110 in BCC. Had it be a simple cubic, 100 would have been the slip plane. Critical resolved shear stress, load application direction, and applied load is P, showing the slip plane, showing the slip direction. Angle between the loading direction and slip direction is lambda. Angle between the slip plane normal and loading direction is phi. So the resolved shear force is P cos lambda acting on the area A by cos phi. So it comes tau r equal to P by A cos phi cos lambda, which is called Schmidt factor. And for slip to occur, tau r need to exceed the critical value, tau c, which is called critical resolved shear stress. When phi and lambda are 45 degree, that is the most suitable condition, as tau r value is highest and there is a high chance that critical value would be crossed. The same thing is shown again.
Sir,
Yes.
so you also talked about one angle xi. So can you explain that one?
Yes. Yes. I will explain that. Xi angle, let us go back and try to show you. Xi angle I have shown so that, for example, if you see this, the way it is drawn, it gives an appearance that phi plus lambda equal to how much?
Ninety.
90 degree.
Which is incorrect. That's why I have shown that angle xi. Because as I told, n, direction n, plane normal, loading direction p, and slip direction need not be on the same vertical plane. Don't think they have to be on a same vertical plane. So the impression that the textbook image is giving is wrong. Can you see my screen? You can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So this red line I have drawn to make that point. That slip direction can also be represented by this red line. So the slip direction can also be like this, the red line. So between the red line and P, that angle is your lambda, and between P and N, the angle is phi. Okay, so don't think that they are on the same plane. They are on same vertical plane. That's why I have shown the angle xi between slip direction and anyway, I will show you whatever drawing. Could you understand my point, what I trying to tell you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Don't think that lambda plus phi equal to 90 degree. It can be wrong. It can be anything. The direction can be anything. Direction can be this, direction can be this, but the direction must lie on that plane. The direction can be this on that plane. The direction can be this on that plane. The direction can be this on that plane. So on that plane, the direction has to lie. So slip direction and slip plane normal. What will be the angle between them? Slip direction and slip plane normal. What would be the angle between them?
90.
90. Then only the direction will lie on that plane. If the dot product is 0, and for that 90 degree is must. So slip plane normal and slip direction, the angle will be 90 degree between them. But between the slip direction and P, that angle is lambda, and between the slip direction, between the P and N, that angle is phi.
Answer xi.
I will show you. Xi, in this calculation, xi is not important. So you need not have to remember the xi, or there is no role of xi. In critical resolved shear stress concept, there is no xi in the equation. So you need not have to remember xi. I will still show you the screen I have drawn in Canvas. I have drawn that angle xi to make you understand that these three directions are not on the same vertical plane. Can you understand now?
Yes, sir.
Xi is not an important angle. The angle xi I have drawn just to make you understand that don't think that these three direction has to be on the same vertical plane. And phi plus lambda is not equal to 90 degree, not necessarily. They may be 90 degree. They may be on the same vertical plane, but there is a high chance that they may not. And that's why I have drawn the angle xi. Otherwise, xi has no role. So this concept we have already defined. Schmidt factor cos phi cos lambda. And in Hertzberg book, you will find these plots are there, where a single crystal of a particular, say, material is loaded in different directions. In different way, the load P is applied. The loading direction was different, and it was found the stress strain curves are shown. So depending on phi and xi values, and slip system in that case was 001, 010. So depending on the phi and xi values, it was found that actually the stress for permanent deformation is significantly changing. So that makes that, oh, there is an importance of these two angles. Experimental proof of critical resolved shear stress concept, that if you change the loading direction, the stress required for deformation is changing. And it is also seen that cos phi cos lambda factor, how that is influencing the, if you calculate yield stress and consider at that stress plastic deformation starts, how that yield stress is affected by the cos phi cos lambda. When the combination of cos phi cos lambda equal to half, it is found that yield stress is minimum. And as those values decrease or increase, significantly yield stress is rising. And then P by A. A is the cross-sectional area. A is the cross-sectional area. So P by A stress, it is found that whatever be the, depending on the loading condition, the P by A stress is changing. But at the time of yielding, the resolved shear stress necessary for yielding remains almost constant. So that defines the critical resolved shear stress. On the other hand, the stress along the slip plane normal direction, sigma n, is also changing with the P by A value. So that tells that slip plane normal stress is not important. The slip plane normal stress can be very high or very low at the time of plastic deformation start. The P by A stress, the stress on the cross section, is not important, because depending on loading condition, loading direction, it is changing. But tau RSS, that is found to be constant irrespective of your loading direction. Whatever way you load, you apply your loading direction P, a constant value of RSS plastic deformation is happening. So that is the proof. Through an experiment on single crystal, the concept of CRSS is proved. In Herzberg book, because someone may say no, that concept is wrong, so experimental proof is necessary. Now CRSS considers all sorts of possible obstacles also. Pearl stress do not consider obstacles. It just tells that if a single dislocation has to move, on which road the movement will be easier. But critical resolved shear stress value, critical resolved shear stress, takes into account other obstacles also. So if I ask you to tell me the critical resolved shear stress value as the function of dislocation density rho, how the plot is going to be? I am coming in 2 minutes. 2 minutes I am coming. How the critical resolved shear stress will vary with dislocation density.
It's a U-shaped curve.
So inversely.
Will it be something like this or
It
something
will
like
be
this?
initially it will be very high, then it will decrease, and then after some point it will again increase. It's a U-shaped curve.
What is the logic? What is your justification?
So if in the crystal there are no dislocations, the shear strength will be very high. Once the dislocations are generated, the movement will be easy and shear stress will be decreasing. After some significant amount of dislocation, there will be interaction between the dislocation, hence the shear strength will again increase.
Can you follow the plot?
Yes, sir.
Yes. When the dislocation density is 0, at what stress value the plastic deformation will occur?
It's a theoretical shear stress.
Tau m. So this value is extremely high, very high, 13 GPa. Then when there is one dislocation, the problem is depending on where that dislocation located, that plane may be slip plane, that plane may not be slip plane. So that is the issue if there is one dislocation. Otherwise, if one dislocation is there on the slip plane, naturally it will move very fast. But then the risk is there that it may happen that on the plane in which that dislocation is located, on that plane resolved shear stress is not there. That's why it is better to have a few dislocations. When few dislocations are there, then you are assured that any one of them will get sufficient resolved shear stress to move. As a result, this curve initially decreases. As I said, if there is a empty football pitch, it is impossible to score a goal. Then you have to bring someone from his home to score the goal. So absolutely empty stadium, goal can never happen. You have to take a lot of effort to organize. Then if 2-3 players, because if one player is there, the risk is that player may not be a footballer. That person may not know how to score a goal. What is a goal? But when 2-3 persons are there, it's fantastic that one of them must know what is goal and how to push the ball inside the goal. But on the other hand, as your dislocation density will increase to 20, then football match is going on, then 100, then so this curve is your linear hardening. We show linear hardening now. So this is your linear hardening portion. That if you increase your dislocation density, your requirement of critical resolved shear stress will go up like this rapidly, proportional to the square root of the dislocation density. It increases in proportion to root rho, or rho to the power half. So dislocation strengthening, if you see, it follows a rho to the power half proportionality. And then there will be strain hardening and other phenomena. If the value is very high, then there may be dynamic recovery. So This is the basic nature of the curve. Now it also depends on your alloy content.
So can you explain once again the graph, why it is decreasing and increasing?
You tell why it is very high when the dislocation density is 0. When
Because
the yes,
to move a stress, more amount of stress is required to move a dislocation because less dislocation is present.
when there is 0 dislocation, how much stress you need to apply?
High. Matlab, theoretical.
Theoretical, right? Theoretical. So it's very, very high because you have to create a dislocation.
Yes, sir.
You have to create a dislocation. Now, if one dislocation, so I am not saying that this portion will always be something like this. It may be in one dislocation and then dislocation is very easily moving. So that curve can be one can be minimum and then it can rise. But when the dislocation density is less, then dislocation movement is very easy because there is no interaction between dislocation. You understand? That means your road, suppose 2-3 car only is there between your road in Kharagpur and Kolkata. So your journey will be easier, right?
Yes.
At small stress, dislocations can move. But what happens is, when more dislocations are there, your metal is already deformed. So more dislocation means on the road, many cars. So there will be traffic jam. And more car will be there, more will be the traffic jam, accidents. So that is called dislocation interaction. Because what happens, dislocations cut each other and form some kind of configuration that is immobile. Sometimes two dislocations react and form a barrier that is immobile. Like what happens when there is a two cars collide. The road get completely blocked. So more and more, when your structure is more and more deformed, dislocation density is increasing, and accordingly your stress requirement for plastic deformation will naturally increase. And what is this called? What is this phenomena called?
Multiplication of dislocation.
Multiplication of dislocation is number of dislocation increasing. But what is this phenomena called? When dislocation density is high, your stress requirement to cause certain amount of deformation is high.
Strain hardening.
Strain hardening.
Strain hardening.
Strain hardening. That's why your stress strain curves look like this. That to get a certain amount of deformation, you need to apply higher and higher value of stress. Strain hardening. The reason behind strain hardening is more and more dislocations are coming and they interact. They develop a spider net kind of structure where movement of any one dislocation becomes more difficult.
So after a certain time, it will again decrease or it will.
Nah, then you can say dynamic recovery, as I said in the last class. It may happen. You will learn that in which case this dynamic recovery is more prominent, in which case it is not. It can die down. It will not decrease. It can die down like this. Because now cross slip has started. But the curve will not come down. The curve will not come down. Now I ask a question to the real metallurgist in the class. Is it not that the curve cannot come down? I can say the curve may come down. Curve may do this. When?
Heat treatment.
Very good.
Recrystallization.
Very good.
Recovery.
During deformation, suppose I apply some amount of deformation up to here, your critical resolved shear stress continuously increasing. That time during deformation, I apply heat. Then what will happen? At a lower resolved shear stress, things will start moving. Rapidly, this value can drop and then again rise. Or what will happen, that depends on the metallurgical phenomena. What is taking place? How much heat you are applying, isn't it? Because there was a lot of dislocations. When you apply heat, what will happen? What will happen? What happened? No answer?
Annihilation. Climb.
Yes. Recovery, recrystallization, as you said.
Recrystallization.
In recovery, what happens? Positive, negative dislocations, left hand, right hand dislocations, annihilate, cancel. But when you apply heat, material softens. Why? Blacksmiths also know that very well. That's why he do not deform the metal at a room temperature. Not necessarily be a metallurgist, but he or she put the metal inside a chula, blow air and heat it up, give 2-3 good bang, and then as it cooled down, again he put inside the furnace. So high temperature dislocation movement becomes easy. Why?
Climb movement.
Okay.
And slip systems will become active.
Climb movement.
Extra slip systems will become
Extra
active.
slip system
World
become
stress
active.
also reduced.
World stress will reduce because atom will now vibrate.
Yes.
One more answer is critical resolved shear stress has two components. You know, this value has two components. One component is called a thermal component and another component is called thermal component. Thermal component means some barrier that is temperature dependent. For example, you have an atom cluster which is restricting your dislocation motion. You have a solute atom, interstitial solute atom. If you heat up, that atom cluster dissolve. Again, going back to the solution. There is a very small precipitate that was restricting the motion that get dissolved. So if you heat up, this component will reduce. More and more heat you apply, this component will come down more and more. So as a result, this value can come down. But provided you apply heat. Similarly, when there is an alloy, if you draw critical resolved shear stress, copper and nickel I am writing. Why? Because they form isomorphous system. That means they can completely dissolve into each other and can form a 50-50 alloy. Similarly, gold, silver, they can form a 50-50 alloy. How the value will be? Critical resolved shear stress value? Something like this. Nickel has a higher value, copper has a lower value, but maximum is at 50-50. Maximum is at 50-50. So what is this aspect called? What is this aspect called?
Solid solution.
Solid solution strength.
strengthening.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Solid solution strengthening. If you take pure iron and you increase carbon percentage and you consider that carbon is going into solution, how the critical resolved shear stress will change? It is going to increase. Again, solid solution strengthening. If I ask you, I put same amount of carbon in BCC iron and FCC iron, will the strengthening be same or not?
So it won't be same.
It
The
won't be
strain
same, sir.
created will be different.
In
So the slip systems are different. So
Chalo, I am not confusing you too much. Think about this question. These are very important questions, right? Because others may, some of you may find it very confusing. Lot of topics are coming up. I just asked this question. You think about it. Some other time we will come into. But these are important, all important questions. Again, I am coming back to the presentation slide. Next slide, you see. Critical resolved shear stress versus dislocation density. Effect of gold content on CRSS of gold silver alloy single crystal. I have shown that resolved shear stress required for deformation versus resolved shear strain plot. When a single crystal is deforming, its stress strain curve. Single crystal deforms under shear stress and shear strain. And we apply a kind of stress. We do not apply shear stress only in your specimen. Your sample, we apply some kind of a stress in some direction, load. But there has to be resolved shear stress on the slip plane along slip direction in single crystal. Then only shear strain will come. And there are 3 stages. Easy glide. Initially, when the dislocation density is small, glide is very easy. Linear hardening. You see, it is proportional to the dislocation density, rho to the power half. And then dynamic recovery. Easy glide, linear hardening, dynamic recovery. If you do the testing of a single crystal, you get this kind of a shear stress, shear strain plot. But your actual tensile plot looks like this. Looks like what I am showing by my pointer, the stress strain curve. Your strain hardening typically shows a little different nature, not exactly these 3 domains. And in the next slide, you will find you are doing shear stress, shear strain plot for a single crystal iron. You will get 3 clear regions. If you do polycrystal iron, your curve will be followed along this blue line plot. So it is interesting. It's not very different. Somewhat similarity is maintained. Linear hardening kind of a portion you can see even in polycrystal plot. Dynamic recovery kind of portion you will also see in polycrystal stress strain curve. But this nature is different from the single crystal nature, and the carb will also be at a higher stress level. The polycrystal carb stress requirement is higher than the single crystal carb. What is the reason?
Dislocation pileups.
Grain boundaries.
I am telling you one thing. Suppose to get certain amount of strain, it's very important to understand, to get certain amount of strain, say 5% strain, 5% plastic strain. In a single crystal, you may need 10 dislocations to be there inside the material. But if it is a polycrystal, you need 100 dislocations to be there. So dislocation density in polycrystal is always higher than that of a single crystal. This is the question I have asked in the last class. Why is that?
So because the grain orientation is different, so they could not come up to the surface.
Isn't it interesting that ultimately polycrystal is made of many single crystal? So if you see the critical resolved shear stress, say for if you make a single crystal iron and if you make a polycrystal iron, the polycrystal iron require more stress to cause deformation, and its strain hardening rate is also high. So what is the difference between single crystal and polycrystal deformation? Can you see my canvas screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Single
sir.
crystal curve in blue line, I am showing stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Easy glide, linear hardening, dynamic recovery. Polycrystal curve I am showing in red line. You see, it is much above. The hardening rate is much above. So what is another factor in polycrystal deformation? That is not there in single crystal deformation.
So,
Orientation of grains.
grain
Difference.
boundaries there. So
The answer is something like this. Say, one of you thinks something, decided something. So as an individual, when you decide something, that decision can be very easily executed. That if you think, one of you think that I will go and watch a movie today, or after the class I will have an ice cream. It's a very easy decision. But when the entire class has to decide something, that a teacher asks you to perform an extra class at some time, then it's a combined decision. So the combined decision has always more constraint than an individual decision. So that aspect I am showing by these blocks. Here, each of these bricks represent single crystals. So there are 4 single crystals drawn in the fashion of a brick arrangement. Inside that, I have drawn the blue lines with a direction. These blue lines are basically slip planes, and the arrows are showing the slip direction. And the loading direction I also have shown. I am applying a vertical loading. What will happen to individually if they deform? What will happen? That also I have shown. What you see? Exactly the way slip planes and slip directions are shown in this plot, the way the individual crystals have slipped in this diagram, in the next diagram. This side a slip has happened. 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 As it was shown here, at the same way the slip has happened. But what can be the problem if individually they deform? What is the answer?
There might be voids inside.
Void. So these red portions I am showing as voids. As they will deform individually, there will be either voids, that is discontinuities, or there can also be a overlap. That one part of a single crystal pushes inside another part of a single crystal. There can be either void or overlap. Immediately you deform, you give one slip, lot of voids get created. So in that case, metal would have got very, very small ductility. Even 0.2% ductility it may not have, if such thing would have happened. We see void formation at a very later stage. So what actually takes care of that is the continuity. So we know that volume constancy needs to be maintained and metal needs to maintain the continuity. So easily voids cannot form. So who takes care of that? Ultimately, if this structure deforms, you will find they are deforming in some way together, where there will be slip, as I have shown. The way I have shown the slip to happen, there will be slip. But some continuity will also be maintained. Along the boundaries, so that things doesn't get discontinuous. So what maintain that continuity? For that, a large number of additional dislocations need to come. So additional dislocations produced at the boundaries, which prevent these voiding or prevent this overlapping. So in single crystal, some amount of deformation will come, which will cause plastic deformation. because one dislocation through and through movement leads to one atomic spacing slip. So 1000 dislocation movement is necessary for 1000 atomic spacing slip in a single crystal. So what these dislocations are called? In single crystal, what these dislocations are called? They are called statically stored dislocations. Statically stored dislocations. You please repeat.
Statically stored dislocations.
Again, you repeat.
Statically stored dislocation.
Statically stored dislocations. These dislocations are necessary to cause the deformation. And one additional set of deformation is coming into play, which is called geometrically necessary dislocations.
So can you please tell again what a statistically stored dislocation?
Statically stored dislocation means if I have a single crystal, I have to deform it to cause slip. I need a dislocation movement, right or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So inside a body, to deform, you need dislocation to move. That is your statically stored dislocations. That means the dislocations, if the dislocation movement is not through and through, then also there will be slip. In that case, the slip is partial. It may happen that a dislocation is there and it moves partially. Say it was here, from here it moves here. You will find not full Burgers vector slip, but a little bit of slip will be there. So it's not necessary that dislocation only end up at the surface of the single crystal. It may remain in the middle. It may move. Any movement of dislocation will give you some amount of slip. It may be one Burgers vector slip. It may be less. So the dislocations that is causing you slip, that is statically stored dislocations. Now, think of a situation where I had another crystal here. I had another single crystal like this beside this crystal. In a polycrystal, I'm showing a bicrystal. So now if the slip has to happen, statically stored dislocation need to move. But what problem is happening here? Suppose this crystal is not deforming, the red color crystal is not deforming. What is the problem that will happen at that point? Overlapping, right? Overlapping. As I said, that individually they are oriented in a different way. As a result, one single crystal deforms like that, another single crystal deforms like that. So what will be created between them? What will be created?
So voids and overlaps.
Voids and overlaps. If they deform in their own way, voids and overlap. Now, who will take care of that voids? Who will avoid the formation of that void and maintain the continuity across boundary? Geometrically necessary dislocations. That's why that word geometrically necessary dislocations, that to maintain the geometry, otherwise it will fragment into pieces. That is geometrically necessary dislocations. So the dislocations generated in a single crystal and the dislocation generated in a polycrystal, the dislocation density is more in polycrystal. Those who have read Ditter's book in grain boundary strengthening chapter, this derivation is there. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So each block, if you see my laser pointer, each block in the first left top image is showing single crystal. You can consider them as grains, as we see on the section surface where crystals interact on the section. There you see grains and grain boundaries. So grains are nothing but the section of crystals on the plane on which you are seeing, metallographic plane. Is it okay? Say D is your grain size. Come to next image. Top right. You are applying a stress and grains or crystals are oriented differently. They can orientate completely randomly. Where we see complete random orientation. Can you give an example where we see complete random orientation? All crystals oriented in random way? If you have read XRD, a collection of powders. A collection of powders is random. All are in different orientation along 360 degree. So their slip plane and slip directions are also differently oriented. So the dotted lines are showing their individual slip plane and slip directions with respect to the loading direction. And they will deform also individually. But if they deform individually, in that process, what will happen? And they will deform individually. And as a result, voids and overlap will be created. Now, if you come down to the bottom left image where two atoms, two crystals are shown with an overlap and with a void. If there is a void, how the dislocations will come to take care of it? If there is an overlap, how the dislocations will come to take care of it? This is shown. So these dislocations are the geometrically necessary dislocations. So in the right hand side bottom, you will find the crystals will deform in their own way. But to maintain continuity, a set of geometrically necessary dislocations are getting created. In this picture, schematic, statically stored dislocations are not shown. Statically stored dislocations are not shown in this schematic. And this is famous Ashby's model. So deformation of polycrystal, deformation of single crystals rely on the movement and multiplication of statically stored dislocations, not shown here. Single crystals deformed individually depending on their orientation with respect to the loading direction. that can create overlap or void and thus discontinuity. Polycrystal deform in a uniform way, maintaining continuity between the individual crystals at the boundaries. For that, a new set of dislocations are generated at the vicinity of the interfaces. That is geometrically necessary dislocations.
So sir, here in polycrystals,
Yes,
there are
yes.
extra set of dislocations. That is why the resolved shear stress is becoming higher and higher.
Yes, 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 yes. Very true.
So, sir, it is obvious that geometrically necessary dislocations are more compared to statistically stored dislocations.
Yes, yes, yes. So these aspects will be quite interesting because now you think, those who can visualize, let us go back to the canvas screen, how the thing can be more interesting. You cannot tell anything. You have to think in perspective, different perspective. Suppose I draw some crystals. In the previous image, I have shown that their slip plane is different, slip direction is different. It may happen that all of them, their slip plane and slip direction are same. That is called what? When this thing can happen. Suppose in all of this crystal, slip plane and slip direction is something like this. When it can happen? What is the terminology? Texture, right. Preferred orientation. When there is a preferred orientation, if this is the situation, will the deformation of the polycrystal be easy or difficult? The way I am drawing them, will it be easy or difficult?
It will be easy.
Easy, because I am showing all of them 45° to loading direction. Right? So all of them will deform. Easy. Had it the case that slip planes are something like that, would the deformation be easy or difficult?
Difficult.
Difficult. You understand now that how easy, how difficult, it will depend on the single crystal orientation also is very important. For example, we say that this class is this batch is very coherent. That they take good decisions or bad decisions together. Whether to attend class, whether to skip class, whether to disturb the teacher. Some batches are very good. They take unanimous decision. And everybody does that at some age. So that we call texture. That preferred, all are oriented similar ways. When someone gives a plan, everybody executes that. Some batches are very difficult, find it very difficult to execute any decision. When some people decide not to go to the class, some people come to the class. They do not share notes. So accordingly, the movement will be. So every individual is a single crystal. The entire batch is the polycrystal. So an extra effort need to come to maintain the continuity, and that is the geometrically necessary dislocation. there is individual orientation. Each person is different. Each person is staying in a particular hall. But inside a polycrystalline sample, there need to be an average orientation. We need to have an average orientation factor. Some factor we need to produce by considering all their individual Schmidt factors, because individually they have their own Schmidt factor, S. Individually all they have their own Schmidt factor, Si. But together there is another orientation factor that is called M, which is called Taylor factor. Taylor factor. That talks about the orientation factor of the polycrystalline material. That if you take a big specimen containing multiple individual single crystal, together what orientation factor, average orientation factor, it will behave. That is called Taylor factor. That Taylor factor can be very high if they are favorably oriented or some way. So that value will depend on their orientation. There can be preferred orientation, there can be random orientation. The preferred orientation can be beneficial for deformation. The preferred orientation can be detrimental for deformation. For example, if you are working with an anisotropic system like HCP, if HCP crystals are lying, you are pulling a specimen like this, and HCP crystals are in lying this. Preferably, all HCP crystals, most of them are like this. Deformation will be very difficult because their basal planes are not getting the necessary resolved shear stress to overcome critical resolved shear stress. Very interesting, right? So I end here. Today a lot of things we have discussed.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Tomorrow again I will take class. Every day I am trying to propagate very slowly so that otherwise if I move fast it will be a problem. Attend class tomorrow also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.